Everyone, welcome back to the course. In this video, we will create our first table. Before we create our table, we'll go through a definition of the table and also best practices when defining a table or when creating a table. Table in a simple term is a structured place for all the data that we store in a database to go in. So you can define the table as a database object that contains all the data in a database. Tables are logically in column and row format. So every row in here is called a record. Now, tables are created by defining columns of information that you want to store. Now, for example, you've got a customer table. In this table, we want to store our customer information. It depends on what kind of information you want to collect, but just for the purpose of demo, I've added the first name, last name, address 1, address 2, city, and the postcode. Right, before you create a table or start adding rows and records to your table, there are a few practices, or as we call it, like best practices when defining a column to keep in mind and to make sure all your tables, your columns are consistent. So first of all, as a best practice, it's always good to make sure that the table name or the column name that you are going to define is something that will give you enough information about what you want to store in it. So name of the column, make it clear about what information it will store. Avoid spaces and characters and be consistent with capitalization. So what do I mean by avoid characters and spaces is if you look at this one, the first name column. So you've got our first name that has 2 letters in it. In terms of the capitalization, you're just trying to keep this consistent. So if you see you've got F that's capitalized, N that's capitalized as well. So you've got first name, and same is for the last name as well as address 1 to city, and we've also got the same thing going on with the postcode. And when coming to being consistent with your capitalization, there are a few different ways that you can pick up, or they're called coding styles. So you got uppercase, and if you want to stick with uppercase, then make sure that you do everything with uppercase. Lowercase will mean just everything lowercase in here. CamelCase is a style of coding which you just keep the first letter here is lowercase, and then the rest, each letter of the next word is capitalized. So for example, if you wanted to do this as a CamelCase, you'll have the F, this will be your lowercase letter, and then you'll have name as capital, so that will give you CamelCase. But PascalCase is again a coding style which I will be using throughout this course. So that means, you know, all my columns are defined as Pascal. So I've got first capital and first capital for each word. If there were another word after this, that would be capitalized as well. But because I've got two words in here, I've got first and then I've got name. The first name, F is capitalized, and N here is capitalized as well. Next thing is just to make sure that you pick up the correct data type. We do have a section about data types in this course later on in another chapter where we will discuss, and I'll explain all the different data types that there is for you to pick up in SQL Server. But at this point, just know that if you wanted to store data, for example, you've got first name, how do you want to store that? Is that a number? Is that a character? And that's what data type refers to. But yeah, generally there are more, but I've just listed a few different data types in here. And as I said, there is another section in the course where we will talk about different data types. But for now, just know that there is a text data type, there is number, date, image, or anything else. These are just defined as data types. It's just the type of data that you want to store in your database. And when coming to picking up a database, SQL Server is very specific, is really specific about the data types that you have. So now, for example, if you're picking up a data type in terms of a text, SQL Server would actually like to know how many characters there is that you want to be storing that as a text. It goes same for the number as well. Well, the date, there are different type of data types as well. As I said, you know, again in our next video we will go through all these different type of data types that there is, and we will explain them with an example as well. It's really important that you think about your data type before you create your table. because this is the place where you will be picking up your data, and as long as it is correct, that's good. And if you pick up a data type that doesn't match your requirements later on, that would then result you dropping the table and then recreating it again. So it's really important to keep in mind and be careful about choosing the data type as well. Another best practice would always be is that when you're creating a column, you need to specify, or you need to tell the system whether you're allowing a null value as well, null value or no. Null value is something that's blank. So now, for example, you've got in our customer table, what we do have is we've got our first name. This is something which will always be required. So for people that we need to add on to our system, our customer need to have a first name. They need to have a last name as well. With address line 1, they need to have a address line 1, but in most cases some people will not have address line 2. So in my case, I've just allowed null for address line 2. That means is if I don't put any data in address line 2, it's okay. The database will still accept that entry. But if this was a required field and I had no information in here and I tried to add that to the database, it will not accept it. It will just ask me to say put something in address line 2, because you cannot skip a value which is required unless you put something in. And that's what allow null is. Again, I'm going to be demoing this one for you to allow nulls, and we will be going through selecting our data types in our next video when we actually create our table. This video was more about the structure of a table and a definition of table as well. I'm going to put all this definition in our description so you don't have to remember it, and if you do want to copy it somewhere, you can do that as well. So see you in the next video.